with these karigars, right? When we sit down with them, we try and understand what it is that they can offer us and what we have learned from our side that we can offer. So the process of transporting and bringing something from elsewhere to here itself, your entire sustainability index is lost. So not necessarily what we envision on paper or what we envision on drawing board actually gets translated to the site. We've always looked at every project but trying to see what is necessary to build. We don't overbuild. Community is extremely important when you're looking at building with these kind of earthen materials at least, right? Every project that we undertake, it's a learning experience for us. So the learning to sort of evolve over a period of time.
A warm good afternoon from the Architects Diary, and I extend a gracious welcome to TADPod. TADPod is an initiative by the Architects Diary where we illuminate the remarkable journeys of leaders with architectural brilliance. Through TADPod, we focus on presenting curated insights from extraordinary individuals, shedding light on their creative process, exemplary philosophies, and exquisite contributions to the built environment. By featuring discussions with visionary architects, designers, and urban planners, TADPod seeks to broaden perspective and shatter stereotypes. TADPod is more than just an interview series. It's a platform for thought leadership, inspiration, and action, driving forward the discourse on architecture and design in pursuit of a better and more vibrant future for all. Today, we have with us Aditya, the principal architect and founder of HabitArt Architecture Studio. The firm is based in Bangalore and crafts bespoke spaces grounded in earth centric design principles. The brainchild of Aditya, Habitat started in 2017 with the intent of understanding climate responsive and sensitive architecture. Having worked with Mistry Architects and interned at HOH Studio, his inclination towards working with various forms of mud and clay has come to life in the ongoing journey of Habitat. The firm is doing an exceptional job with its sustainable and community centric approach to design. It's an honor to have you, Aditya, today. And without further ado, let us begin with an insightful interview session as we go ahead with our interview. But to begin, I would really like to know that your journey through architecture, right from initially embracing this field of architecture to crafting spaces with such sustainable and ecological design approach, it must have been filled with, I think, various experiences. So, like, could you share some of the key moments which shaped this whole journey of yours?
Absolutely. It's got two sides of the coin, right? So I mean, it looks good, it looks great on when you present it, or it looks great when it's completed. But I think, I mean, of course, a lot of architects would know this, but when you want to put this out to people around, the process is something which is the biggest challenge, right? And to be very honest, I think to get into this space and try and create architecture of this kind, and try to work along these lines, is a very very process oriented or a process driven exercise, right? It's not something that can be done overnight. And also, you might probably end up coming with a design which looks appealing or which may work, but at the end of the day, if you can't collaborate or work with the grassroots level, right? Get into a collaborative understanding, or get into thinking at the level of what the essential, we call them Mistry or karigar. We don't refer to them as labor, right? Because it's a very that's not the right term. We don't call them that because they're creating these pieces of art, right? So with these karigars, right, when we sit down with them, we try and understand what it is that they can offer us and what we have learned from our side that we can offer. So it involves a lot of experimentation with trying to understand what are the kind of finishes, like especially when it comes to mud. The composition of the block itself changes due to what is locally available around you, right? So the first thing we need to understand is whether the soil is even suitable for building or not, right? Can we build with this? So if the soil is not suitable for building, then I don't think we want to look at the exercise of bringing soil from outside, which would probably be, let's say, 100 or a couple of 100 kilometers away, because the process of transporting and bringing something from elsewhere to here itself, your entire sustainability index is lost, right? So you're increasing the carbon footprint. You're bringing in a lot more in terms of transportation. There is cost, there's fuel burnt. So the idea was to see whether this exercise of feasibility by building something with earth is possible or not. So If it's possible, great. Fortunately, we've been, we've been lucky to see that it's possible, and we collaborate with, with agencies like Mrinmai for this, because they are pioneers in terms of understanding what is the soil compressive strength, what is the composition of the soil, and whether the soil is feasible to build or not. And based on these reports, based on these understandings, then we have, a discussion and dialogue with our clients as well. And with the clients, we sit with these, with these karigars, and then we try and figure out the entire course of the program, right? And many times, believe it or not, the design actually changes on the site because of what is available to us and what is not available to us. So not necessarily what we envision on paper or what we envision on drawing board actually gets translated to the site. So the process requires a lot of patience, and it requires, it requires you to be very process driven in that bargain. I'm sure that a lot of architects, there are a lot of other architects working in this space. We're not the only people over here, and I can, probably name like, tons of them who are probably doing much more than what we are, taking much more in terms of the effort that we probably are. But at the end of the day, right, I mean, everybody has to, understand that this is going to take time, right? And even with clients that we onboard, we tell them that, if we're getting into this exercise, understand that this is not going to be your conventional construction, and this requires a lot more, because this is visual, right? What you see is what you get at the end of the day, right? And if that is not achieved, then it's kind of, and we're real sticklers when it comes to finishes, right? So we really want the finishes to be on point, and we do it honestly in the interest of the project. And this is a good way for us to learn the bargain, right? So every project we try improving on the finishes. I think over the last, I think when we started with the first mud block, we haven't published that, or we haven't put it out, because we know that we hadn't done justice to it. I mean, in terms of the finishes, at least it functionally works. But I think over the last, few years, we have been able to improve on that. But again, the improvisation has come only with trying to, be a part of the process and trying to work with like-minded people in order to achieve this, right? So that is both the positive and the negative aspect of, working with obviously finishes like this. And when I get into the delve into the negatives at times outweigh the positives, because many a times, sites are left abandoned, or people have the tendency to leave in between, and then trying and, finding someone else in place of who's already been working here before, reinventing the process, right? And also the problems when multiple hands work on the same development of the same project, it becomes even more difficult, right? Because it's partially finished, and then bringing a new finish to match with the older one becomes difficult. So it's always a, very very demanding challenge for us and the contractors and the workmen to the karigars to sit across this and work together. And many a times, a lot of them, look at various other opportunities, because the process is slow, right? So I mean, the moment there's something more lucrative, there's a tendency to, leave the site and go elsewhere. Yeah, it's fair. I mean, it is human tendency. But I think, this is what helps us to stay grounded and, see that, okay, fine, if we don't have a solution, then what is the next, what is plan B, what is plan C? So that's the only way I think we can, put these out together.
Right. I think you rightly said. I think it's like the two sides of the coin, but the amount of efforts that go into breaking away from the conventional style of architecture, it takes real patience and I think determination to continue on the same path, even if
True.
it takes time.
Absolutely, absolutely agree with you. But
So
the end of the day, the process is very rewarding, and once you see it come to life, I think none of the negatives can even outweigh, whatever sleepless nights that you've gone through is totally worth it.
it's all worth it, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely worth it.
So, having actively shaped the way people perceive living spaces with a fresh perspective, how do you integrate experiential elements beyond functionality and aesthetics to create truly immersive environments for the users?
So when you look at it in terms of experiential, terms of an experiential, understanding, I think a lot of it is developed through the process, and once the end user starts occupying the space, right? So I think a lot of it for us, as I previously mentioned as well, is constant dialogues with
Mm.
your clients, the end users, into what they want, what they don't want. And we've always looked at we've always looked at every project, but trying to see what is necessary to build. We don't overbuild, right? And that is something that we try and avoid wherever possible. and by not overbuilding itself is a form of giving that quality in terms of an experiential feeling or an experiential understanding, because you're able to blur the line between the built and unbuilt, right? And a lot of it essentially is only appreciated and understood once the end user starts occupying the space. And it's always nice, or it's very heartwarming when we've worked with clients we've worked over the last 4 5 years, call us back even today saying, what, hey, I remember, you discussed this with me, and now I'm just sitting outside on my deck, and I'm just looking at the sunrise, and I remember these things that you said to me, saying that, no, this is the perfect place where you could actually sit and watch the sunrise. And I get to do this quite often. So it's a very very overwhelming sort of a that overwhelming feeling that comes back to you when they call you and they just remember you for just that one little thing that you've said. So that's when we understand that, okay, maybe we've made some kind of a difference to them, right? And uh, if that's what keeps them happy, then I think that's where the experiential understanding kind of puts I think finds its way, right? So, and I don't think there is a price for that, right?
Right.
It's very priceless in that essence.
Definitely. I think whenever you are in such spaces, which are made with natural materials or which are closer to nature, I think in itself the user gets to feel that calmness and a sense of comfort, I think, that is created by the material. The material is talking then. So I think that
Absolutely.
helps a
And,
lot.
one more disclaimer from us is whatever we've done over the last 5 6 years, right? We've kept provisions for air conditioning, but even today, with rising temperatures, we've not, even today, none of these have air conditioners inside, including the institutional project that we've worked on,
Wow.
right? So we're all functioning as naturally as possible. We like keeping spaces naturally ventilated, but I
Right.
understand that, there will be times where you would be requiring, because even though we are in a relatively moderate
Hmm.
climate, especially in Bangalore.
Yeah.
Bangalore's also been facing very very hot months, and this year was sort of filled with a severe water crisis and a water shortage between Feb to around April, right? The lack of rains and the El Nino effect and everything
Hmm.
coming into place. So I think in that sense, if we are still able to manage without air conditioning, or if we are able to limit it, maybe let's say to maybe an hour or
Right.
two at max, or maybe three in a day, I still think we're relatively okay in that sense. So we would like to contribute to being more in that space, right? Now I'm not sure whether you can look at it in terms of, are you carbon zero, are you carbon negative, positive? I don't know, but at least you try a concerted effort to make your dependency on something artificial
Right.
relatively limited, right?
Definitely. I think that in itself is quite a success if someone can reduce their consumption of AC from what is normally used in other cities for like 8, 9 hours of the day to 2, 3 hours. I think that's a great success, I would
It
call
makes a
it.
difference. Yeah, definitely. It does
Yeah.
make. I think every hour or every minute probably counts when
Yes.
you
Yes.
when
I
you
think
look
with
at that
the
aspect.
pace we are going towards the climate change, I think that's a big deal. If, as you said, 1 minute of it is also going to make a lot of difference.
Absolutely. And I'm really hoping that we can continue to keep this practice alive as
Right.
we grow ourselves as architects, and hopefully that's something that we would definitely like to carry forward.
Yes. So, as we believe that sustainable architecture has varied aspects beyond material selection, so what role do you think community and the cultural context play in your designs?
I think I've already
Yes.
your question is already answering this, right? So when I spoke about what we did with the Boulder House, the first thing that we tried to figure out is how can we bring people to build this together.
Hmm.
Believe it or not, that's not a very very largely built space. That's just about 2,500 square feet at max, right? When I'm even talking about the built and the semi-built area. And it took a good whole 2+ years to build it, because that was the first project in that locality that we were doing. So when we took it up as a first project, it was very challenging to find the kind of like-minded people to work with, right? And again, as I said, scouting through the community, trying to figure out who are the right kind of people to build with. And it also required you to interact a lot with the locals around, right? Because surprisingly, they've had the skill and the expertise, considering a lot of them had their own houses built out of mud plaster and things like that. But surprisingly, a lot of them today said, yeah, why do you want to do this? It's such a waste of time. Just build it off in cement, close it off. You'll finish your project, and like we'll finish it for you in 6 months to a year. And that's when we told them that you're not looking at the value that you yourself have implemented in your own spaces, right? You've implemented this in your own space, but then at the same time you're discouraging us from doing it. Why not look at encouraging us, right? Encourage us to do it, and let's try and do this as a collective effort. And that's when it took a bit of convincing, but at the same time when we started putting things together is when we understood that yes, they are willing to come back, right? And they are willing to sort of do something different. And that's when I think a lot of it became collaborative, a lot of it became dialogue based. And I think we learned a lot in the process, right? So I think we were fortunate enough to have them on board with us, and they helped us learn a lot in the process. And of course, what we had from our understanding and previous experiences also came into the process. So community is extremely important when you're looking at building with these kind of earthen materials, at
Right.
least, right? Because skill and workmanship, and today that's getting lost, right? A lot of people are now moving towards the city because there are a lot of job
Hmm.
opportunities.
Hmm.
So our way of looking at it is telling them, hey, okay, fine, you have a son who's almost like who's finished school, or who's finished a most of them have degrees today. They've gone to the cities, they've studied. So a lot of the youth today is actually very well educated. So what happened in this process was we were able to have them convince the younger guys to come back. And we were able to distribute certain materials across. A lot of things happen across WhatsApp today, right? So they were able to look at materials, they were able to understand how to construct with mud, how to build. And of course we did a few workshops here and there with them,
Hmm.
so involving them and involving ourselves together. So I think that helped the most, I think, at the end of the day, right? So when you put a community to build, that's what brings it to reality. Otherwise it's just going to remain a project on paper, and you know as good as
Right.
it looks, it's never going to see the light of day, right? Yeah.
Right, right. So
Yeah.
I think adding to what you said, how do you see the collaboration between architects and artisans contributing to creation of buildings that are not only sustainable but also timeless in the craftsmanship or the design and the functionality of the space?
Right. So again, right, I think craftsmanship is something that goes unsaid. I think a lot of it has been, over generations, right?
Right.
And I think essentially what's happening in today's, rapidly changing times and trends, and of course, end of the day, time has also become the essence of money. I mean,
Yes.
let's not kid ourselves, right? So slow is good. There is no doubt about it.
Hmm.
Slow learning and slowing down and working is a good thing. But at the same time, it also comes with a lot of other challenges where you're stuck to one commitment for a relatively longer period of time. And it so happens that the previous generation doesn't encourage the younger generation to continue that trade or continue that practice, right? So it takes a lot of convincing. And well, I think if you're able to work in those lines, right? Work according to how they think, right? And don't look at yourself as an architect at the end of the day, right? Look at yourself amongst them, right? Look at yourself as their friend. I think a lot of these, a lot of the folks that we worked with have become good friends with us over time, right? So whenever we are on site, it's always about having friendly conversations, or it's having the friendly chats, and having a cup of tea together. So it's become like that today, right? And essentially when we end up creating such environments, we've had people who are there with us, who are staying with us. And see, it's just a way for us to try and see how we can keep some of these practices alive. Now, I mean, I can't guarantee that it will continue tomorrow. It may not. A lot of this is hanging by the thread. But I think as much as possible, and keeping yourself keeping the basic motive of trying to continue in this field of architecture, I think hopefully, I mean, we can continue this in at least in the few years to come. And maybe as long as we're able to make a difference in the lives of these artisans and the lives of the people that we work with, I think we're able to uh, what do you call, answer some of the questions that we ask our own selves at the end of the day.
Right. Agreed. As we move ahead, with the advancement of technology, how are you harnessing the power of technology to ensure that your buildings are sustainable and energy efficient?
Again, see, I think technology, of course, kind of is something that's always changing, right? It's a very variable form.
Hmm,
And likewise, we also try to see where we as individuals can sort of adapt with technology and how we can sort of adapt with the way things evolve. But yes, at the same time, you might be able to evolve in terms of modern day trends or modern day technology advancements. Yes, but at the same time, try and keep the core of the composition very simple. So let's say you are able to develop some interesting what do you call steel structures with large spans and things like that. Even in that kind of architecture as well, try and see what aspect of some aspect of sustainability or some aspect of trying to work with climate responsive architecture kind of falls in place. So I think that way, if you look at it, right, terminal to the airport of Bangalore, right, Bangalore T2 is, I think, a fantastic experience in terms of how biophilic elements have been integrated as a part of architectural design, right? So there's a huge amount of bamboo that's being utilized as a part of the entire structural framework. Of course, with the combination of steel because the spans are relatively large. But again, that kind of blends in with the brick wall that they've used as a part of the masonry, and of course the local Sadrali granite which they've used as a part of the region. So try and build with your context, right? But at the same time, you should use and you should adapt to technology over a period of time. So I think that is something that we would and we want to keep adapting ourselves with. But at the same time, I think for us, we did at the same time want to go back in time, right? So the idea was to go back to see how load bearing structures work in today's day and age, because
yes.
a lot of us have actually not. I mean, we've obviously gotten out of it, right?
Hmm,
But I think going back to it was something great because we have learned to understand that this still stands the test of time.
right.
So it's essentially a balance that you create at the end of the day, and
Right.
how you do it is completely left to you as an architect, right?
Right. I think with the like with the rise in technology, I think we can take the help from it. I think to help
Absolutely.
visualize how the building would
You
perform
can
at
even
the
simulate, right? You
yeah,
can simulate the
yes,
performance, right? So
right.
the NSB Bangalore that we're doing
Hmm,
right now is on its way for an IGBC certification, and we're trying to hit
okay.
the platinum rating. So I think we are on the way of, or we are on the verge of achieving it.
Hmm,
I think the results would be up very soon, but we did get a very very positive response after the energy audit had been done. So
okay.
I think in that sense, so if you see the expansion that we have done, right,
Hmm,
the intervention of the steel structure with the wraparound and then the
yes.
roofs, the suspended roofs, we've been able to look at a very short timeline, right? We've been
Hmm,
able to build within a span of 3 months, but at the same time, we've also been able to create these large overhangs, create a lot more ventilation, natural lighting. So certain essences from what we've done in the previous phase have also come back to this, but
right.
this is definitely more in terms of the technology and the usage of the way we've designed it as a steel structure, like a
Hmm, hmm,
tensile steel structure. And at the same time, the implementation of solar, and now it's completely on running on rainwater harvesting as well.
right.
We are also trying and seeing if a DWAT system from Orwell can be achieved for this. Of course, we do have space constraints, so that is one thing we're evaluating. But again, using rainwater harvesting, and entire building works on rainwater harvesting, and of course, we're able to generate about 80 kilowatts of solar, and we're even able to look at the option of giving back to the grid.
Hmm, hmm,
So I think if we are able to use these modern advancements in technology, I think it's good. We can even track the energy consumption of the building using an app now. So that's how
right.
good solar providers have been able to give us tracking energy performance through apps, right?
Right.
And
Right.
I think, yeah, well, this is great technology, right? If you use it, I think you further educate yourself on how exactly your architecture is performing at the end of the day.
Right. And gives us maybe a scope to look at what we can improve maybe for the next upcoming projects as well.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, and this is something that we want to consciously try and
Right.
implement in. Even the Boulder Farm is also done completely powered on solar. Even the Saffron Veranda,
Hmm,
and all these are now powered using apps, right?
Right.
The other system of technology that we've used is something called as a biodigester. I think I forgot to mention that in the the farmhouses that we've
Mm-hmm.
done. So biodigesters are essentially very different from soak pits, right? Soak pits essentially take the sludge from the black water from the toilets and directly get into either get into the earth, or you create septic tanks where the sludge gets collected and then it gets cleaned over a period of time and taken out. But here, what we're doing is these biodigesters are essentially sunk into the ground, right? And the plumbing lines are connected to them. Now, what essentially happens is this is like a filter. So there are certain bioenzymes which are provided by these service providers. So bioenzymes essentially help in breaking down the human sludge. The moment the human sludge or the black water enters into the biodigester, these bioenzymes which are fed into the system last for a period of about 5 to 6 months, and they help in breaking down these components, because essentially human waste is not really valuable for valuable to the soil, right? So essentially what happens is this gets broken down and further gets broken into smaller and smaller components until it becomes water, or until it becomes a much diluted stage. So the overflow is essentially then taken into a soak pit and then it is taken out. So we're not essentially putting that wastewater directly into the earth, but we are treating it across certain layers and then we're releasing it out. So there is that sort of a time delay or a lag
Right.
which is happening. During this lag process, it's getting broken down into various treatments.
Right, right. I think these small
So
steps that we keep on taking, I think, end up having a better result, I think, and overall, you
right.
have a good green, sustainable building, I would say.
Absolutely. So the company that we've been working is known as Relief. Relief is the name of the company, and we're trying to see that we're even, if we're even trying to incorporate some of these into the city projects that
Mm,
we work on, because a lot of these gated communities do not have a sort of a sanitary line, right? So a lot
right.
of them have the septic tanks into which
Mm,
it gets emptied and then it gets cleaned out.
mm,
So rather than a septic tank, we try to create this, then we try to create a soak pit, and then we create a collection chamber, which is essentially then it's water, right? So it's broken down.
right. I think that that's a great initiative. I think the small efforts we keep taking will definitely take us ahead. And I think as one
True.
architect experiments with it, with the awareness that is created, I think everyone can start cumulatively adapting to such changes, which might
Absolutely. In fact,
take
we've
us
been
to
recommending this biodigest to even some of our, some of my friends and counterparts who've
right.
been, in this field and profession. So, I don't think us being the only one using it. I don't see
Yeah,
exclusivity. I'd rather see the exclusivity with everyone trying to use it.
right.
So then we're collectively involved in this process, and then I think together we can architecture goes way beyond that, right? So
Yes.
how we can use some of these and then make things better for us definitely makes a difference at the end of the day.
Right. Rightly said. So, Aditya, with your career on a rise, what are your next steps? Like, where do you envision yourself and your practice in the coming years?
Oh God, you put a very you put a question to me that's probably questioning my next 5 year plan. But honestly, if I were to tell you, Simran, we haven't really thought ourselves that far, right? We're still a practice that likes to take it, maybe let's say project by project, or rather than a project, we say experience, right? So experience with every experience, and with every project that we undertake, it's a learning experience for us. So the learning to sort of evolve over a period of time and then implement it across hopefully, so this year we've signed up for slightly larger scales, so more institutional. We are getting into hospitality, and we're even getting into industrial. So the pitch across to these various sectors is also to see what USP we hold, right? So the idea of working with these entities is to have the USP that we've had in some of these residential setups that we worked before, and try and see how it can be worked on a larger scale. And a lot of these segments, a lot of these clients that we are now onboarding with are accepting what we've done, because they've seen it and they've experienced it, right? So in the process, I think if we can implement this at a larger level, I think that is probably something that's going to help us see our long-term vision and a long-term plan. The idea is not to dilute what we do as a practice. So rather than scaling heavily upfront, I think we would try to scale up by slowly trying to incorporate some of these things one by one. And you know the goal remains the same at the end of the day, so we hope we don't end up deviating from this in the near future.
Yes. So, as we get to the end of our interview, what would be your piece of advice for our listeners and the young practices out there?
I don't know, just follow your instincts, right? I mean, I think that's the simplest way of looking into it. I think even for me, until I probably halfway through the course, right, halfway through architecture, it was quite difficult to figure out what I as an individual would want to do in the future. But I think slowly, internships and thesis and exploring a few things which go beyond the walls of academics have really helped.
Right,
And I think that's when you find your calling, right? And I think if you find your calling, just stick to that and do it. Um, yeah, I mean, just believe in yourself. Yeah, I think it kind of falls in place. Right? I think when we first started, 6 years back, we started off with a very very tiny renovation project which we struggled to complete. We took 6 months to complete it, but I think that was the stepping stone to start doing things
right,
differently, or learning from each experience. And I think looking at ourselves from where we've started to what
mm,
we've come today, definitely it's been a very illustrious journey rather. So I think believe in the power of the
mm,
process and don't really look at the end product or the end destination. I think we'll eventually get there.
right,
And also work without expectations. Expectations lead to a lot of disappointments. So just do what you do. It may work at times, it may not, but it's also fine, because failure is also an essential part of the journey to help us understand. And I think, as I told you, the first mud block project that we did is not even published over here because it worked functionally, but it was not to our
mm,
liking. So but that didn't stop us from trying the next, and then the next, and then the next,
right,
right? So this year we have about 13 projects to put forth to
mm,
share with everyone, right? And these are based on working with natural earth and natural materials. But we've still not done that. We're still in the process of documenting it.
right,
So we let it be, right? Because let it take its shape. Let
mm,
it go through
mm,
the process, and let it happen one by one. So if you can, stick to that, I think just stick to it and just do what you're doing. Right?
right. I think it's still the time that you have to figure out what you really want to do. I mean, architecture offers you such a diverse platform that it gets really confusing when you graduate, that what you want to practice, like whether it's the modern contemporary architecture that is going on, or do you want to go to the sustainable routes. So I think
Yeah,
that's the real challenge that people generally
absolutely.
face.
Absolutely. It's a very competitive market. And I mean, there are times that, you will have to take up, really small jobs in order to run your practice or run yourself. But, there is no harm in doing it, because honestly, for us to come to the stage as well, we were able to sustain our what do you call, our passion for some of these
Mm,
projects by taking smaller pet projects on the side, like let's say, okay, there's a small kitchen renovation
yes,
or a small bathroom renovation. There's no harm in doing it, because
right.
some of these, when you take up some of the smaller pet projects of
Mm,
yours on the side, right, and when you do it, you not only sustain yourself, but you also learn small critical
yes.
components of design which can be integrated in some of these larger projects that you slowly start looking your slowly start putting yourselves
Mm,
into.
mm,
So it's completely fine. So you need to sort of create that balance between doing both, right? So it's essentially the best of both worlds.
right.
And I think that that's
Definitely.
what kind of helps you to get to the front.
Yes, yes. I think it's the patience to keep going, and then once you figure out what you want to do, all the collective experiences from the times that you felt like were not working out really guide you ahead.
Absolutely. We still face those challenges even today. So
Yeah.
at any given point in time, you're not going to say, okay, fine, I've had everything sorted out, because I think the moment you've had certain things sorted out is the day that you stop learning, or the day that you stop experimenting.
Right.
So I don't think throughout this entire journey we're really going to have anything sorted out. Even today, we question ourselves to, what it is that we're doing. Are we sticking to what we're doing, or do we diversify here and there? But that's completely fine. It's good to have these conversations, amongst yourselves, and you know,
Yes.
um, then find your journey. I guess find your path to your journey.
Right. Yes. Thank you so much, Aditya, for this wonderful, lengthy interview that we had. It was really
Thanks.
insightful, I think, for even the listeners. It will be really helpful who are trying to find their way into sustainable architecture and trying to understand what sustainability goes. So, thank you so much for this, and looking forward to more
Likewise.
such amazing projects from you.
Absolutely. I mean, we hope we can, share some more of this with the listeners out there, with all of you.
Yes.
Hope to feature some more work of ours onto your platform. I think you all have also helped us to sort of, grow and spread the word, the kind of work that we're doing. So I think a lot of wonderful initiatives from you all have also helped small practices like us to, get some level of recognition and understanding. So we're really grateful to that.
Yes, it's an honor, and yes,
Yeah.
thank you so much, and yes,
Thanks a lot. Yeah, it's
okay,
it's been a pleasure to connect. Thank you
yes,
so much. See you.
see you, bye.
Thank you.